I have never needed to wait until an ectopic pregnancy was ruptured in order to treat it. And that's not because Roe v. Wade was the law of the land that I didn't have to wait. It's because that's accepted in general medical reasonable judgment as a life-threatening condition even before it's ruptured.
Hi, everyone. Rebecca Terrell with the New American Magazine. And since the demise of Roe v. Wade, media outlets have been claiming that restrictive laws in pro-life states are endangering women's lives and physicians' licenses. And today with us to discuss this is Dr. Christina Francis. She's a board-certified Obgyn and is also CEO-elect of the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. It is an organization that is 7,000 members strong. And one thing that is particularly impressive to me about Dr. Francis is her missionary work. Among other places, she has spent 3 years in rural Kenya as the only Obgyn serving 300,000 patients. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Dr. Francis?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for having me. And I really had an amazing time working in, like you said, in rural Kenya. We were up in the hills in just a beautiful area of Kenya. But yeah, it was pretty remote, but we served a very large area. We had about a 110-bed hospital. And as you said, I was the only OBGYN for that entire area, which is roughly 300 to 350,000 people. And I spent 3 years there serving at the hospital with my Kenyan colleagues and just had an amazing time really seeing what just basic medical care can do for people, especially when given in a compassionate way. And so it was an amazing time in my life and something that I thought I'd be doing for the rest of my life. But life took a little bit of a turn, and now I'm doing this. So.
Well, that is fantastic. Tell me then, you said that experience really put in front of you how important prenatal care is. And now we're hearing these news reports that the demise of Roe v. Wade means that women are not receiving that necessary life-saving prenatal care. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, well, I agree. That's this really false narrative that's out there that's being spread that by limiting the ability for preborn children's lives to be ended, that somehow we're adversely impacting women's healthcare. And nothing could be further from the truth. As you said, when I lived and worked in Kenya, I saw what happens when women don't have access to good care. And I saw what actually does make a difference in their health outcomes. And that's not abortion. In fact, I saw abortion complications when I was living there that further jeopardized women's health. But what women really need in order to improve their healthcare outcomes, in order to improve their lives and their children's lives, is access to basic things like routine prenatal care, blood pressure screening, blood transfusion capabilities, emergency surgery capabilities, skilled birth attendants, things like this. None of these laws that we're looking at here in the US to potentially limit abortion are going to impact any of those things. And in fact, I think taking away abortion as this Band-Aid that it really has been used, for the last 50 years, I think a lot of people within the medical community, a lot of people just within the policy community have looked at our issue of maternal mortality, which we know is one of, if not the worst in the developed world, which is really, we should be ashamed of that as a country. Again, I lived in rural Kenya. I've been in a place where you can kind of understand why the maternal mortality might be what it was, because we didn't have a lot of basic resources. But here in the US, we do. And there's no reason that our mortality rate should be as high as it is. The problem with free access to elective abortion is that I think a lot of people have just assumed that that's going to be a fix for our maternal mortality problem, or at least help that problem. But in fact, what we've seen is that over the last 50 years, our mortality rate has gotten worse. It hasn't gotten any better. So access to elective abortion has done nothing to improve maternal outcomes. And I really think what it has done is it has turned attention away from where it should be, which is looking at the root causes for maternal mortality and addressing those root causes, giving women better care during their pregnancies, as opposed to just telling them that the answer to our maternal mortality problem is just to end the lives of their preborn children.
And what about this issue now that women are going to be resorting to chemical abortions, self-managed?
Yeah, this is a real problem, but I think the most important thing to emphasize is that this did not start when Roe was overturned. This has been going on now for years. The abortion industry has been the one pushing it for women to be able to obtain abortion pills without an in-person visit. So whether it be through a telehealth visit at best, or more frequently, just on a website where who knows who's screening, women for whether or not they shouldn't be receiving these pills, or whether or not they qualify under the parameters that have been identified by the FDA under its approval. So this has been going on for years. And in fact, 2 years ago, the American College of OBGYNs, who claims to be the premier professional medical organization for OBGYNs in this country, they actually sued the FDA over the restrictions that were in place over abortion pills, mainly over the in-person visit requirement, stating that during the COVID pandemic, this was too onerous for women to be able to obtain these abortion pills, to have to see a medical professional in person. Unfortunately, they won that lawsuit. Those restrictions were enjoined, and almost immediately, dozens upon dozens of websites popped up where women could get on and get these pills without appropriate screening. So this started well before Roe was overturned. This has been a push by the abortion industry and its allies like ACOG. And unfortunately, in December of 2021, just this past December, the FDA finalized that lifting of those restrictions, saying that women did not need to be seen in person. And this is really dangerous. And I think it's important for people to know this. It's dangerous for many reasons. And so regardless of where you stand on the issue of abortion, you should be opposed to women receiving these medications without an in-person visit. First of all, we know that even with an in-person visit, medication abortions have a 4 times higher complication rate than do surgical abortions. That's even under the best circumstances where they're seen in person, they have an ultrasound, all of that. What's more dangerous now about women obtaining these pills without an in-person visit is we know that the complication rate goes up exponentially the farther along in pregnancy a woman is. And even the American College of OBGYNs says that up to 50% of women will be wrong about how far along they are in their pregnancy and need an ultrasound to confirm that. Well, if they're not being seen in person, we don't know how far along they are. Second, they need to be screened for ectopic pregnancy. So one of the common narratives that we're hearing right now is, oh, women are going to die from ectopic pregnancies because abortion is restricted, which of course is false. And I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But, all of these abortion proponents are talking about how dangerous ectopic pregnancies are, and they are. It's one of the leading causes of maternal mortality in the first trimester. It occurs in 1 in 50 pregnancies. Well, women who are getting these pills online, they're not being screened for ectopic pregnancy. People giving them these pills have no way of knowing whether or not that pregnancy is in the uterus or not. And if they take these pills, 1, the pills don't end an ectopic pregnancy. They're not effective treatment for that. And 2, the symptoms of a ruptured ectopic pregnancy are exactly the same as the symptoms of a medication abortion, which are abdominal pain and vaginal bleeding. And so women are going to be losing precious minutes at home thinking that these symptoms are perfectly normal, when in fact they're rupturing their ectopic pregnancy. And if they don't seek medical treatment immediately, they could die from this. This is extremely dangerous. Again, no matter where you stand on the issue of abortion, you should be opposed to this. This is frank medical malpractice and should not be being advocated for by any medical groups whatsoever. And then a couple other dangers associated with online abortion pills, without an in-person visit, is blood type screening. So women who have a negative blood type need to receive a medication called Rogam in order to prevent complications in future pregnancies. And then we also know that many women feel pressured or coerced into their abortions. Many women who are trafficked have forced abortions. And how on earth is anyone going to be screened for coercion or trafficking or abuse when they're just obtaining pills online? This is, the perfect setup for a trafficker or for an abuser to be able to obtain these pills and force abortions on their victims. So nothing could be further from female empowerment, from empowering women, to have control over their own healthcare decisions than this setup of online abortion pills without any sort of medical supervision.
It really is frightening. You're painting a frightening picture. And let's go back to that issue of ectopic pregnancy. Now, that is where an embryo implants and starts to develop outside of the uterus, correct?
Correct.
And that is something that you, as an OB-GYN, how do you handle that when you are presented with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said before, these are actually fairly common, 1 in 50 pregnancies. And the most common site where they implant is in the fallopian tube, but there's several places where they can implant outside of the uterus. And like I said, these are life-threatening conditions for moms. And so we absolutely have to intervene. And, as a pro-life OBGYN who would never intentionally end the life of my fetal patient, I have never had any qualms about treating an ectopic pregnancy. In fact, I've treated hundreds in my career. And the reason for that is because we have to save mom's life. If mom dies, baby dies as well. And so we are pro-life in all circumstances, meaning in those circumstances where we can save both mom and baby, then we do that. But in the times where we can't, then we have to save mom. And so I have never had any qualms about intervening and treating an ectopic pregnancy. And these claims that physicians are having to wait until the ectopic is rupturing and women are, critically ill are completely false. And I think they're intentionally false narratives in order to scare women and physicians into supporting elective abortion. I have never needed to wait until an ectopic pregnancy was ruptured in order to treat it. And that's not because Roe v. Wade was the law of the land that I didn't have to wait. It's because that's accepted in general medical reasonable judgment as a life-threatening condition even before it's ruptured. So as soon as that ectopic pregnancy is diagnosed, it should be treated. And I think it should be noted that no abortion clinics like Planned Parenthood or any other abortion clinics are treating ectopic pregnancies because they can't. Those treatments are different treatments than what are done for abortions. And so, these claims by the abortion industry that somehow women are going to die from ectopic pregnancy because abortion is restricted, not only is a lie, because those two things are not at all the same, but they're using this smokescreen of that they care about women that are suffering from these conditions in order to justify their position, which really is elective abortion on demand through all 9 months of pregnancy.
Okay, and I also want to talk too about the other side of the coin. I've read news reports that say that OB-GYNs are fleeing these conservative states because they can't practice. Let's talk about the percentages of OB-GYNs who actually perform elective abortions, and then about this medical wasteland that the media is predicting is going to happen in pro-life states.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we know based on surveys that were done actually by pro-abortion researchers that anywhere from 76 to 93% of OBGYNs do not perform abortions. And that's because we understand that elective abortion is not healthcare and it doesn't belong anywhere in healthcare. And yet all of those OBGYNs who don't perform abortions are treating miscarriages, they're treating ectopic pregnancies, they're treating other life-threatening conditions in pregnancy. So this false narrative that all of a sudden the majority of OBGYNs are going to have their practices significantly impacted by abortion restrictions, nothing could be further from the truth. Most OBGYNs are going to be able to continue to practice as they've always practiced, especially if they take the time to fully understand what the law in their state means, what it prohibits and what it doesn't. And currently no state law prohibit treating life-threatening conditions in pregnancy, such as ectopic pregnancies, but also other conditions like preeclampsia or an infection in the uterus. And no state laws prohibit the treatment of miscarriage. The claim that OBGYNs are going to be fleeing states, now possibly if they are OBGYNs who are significantly profiting off of performing elective abortions on women, they might be leaving to go to another state. There are going to be states that they can go to. However, again, the vast majority of OBGYNs, this isn't going to affect their practice. And so I think most will stay put. The other thing I would tell you is that we as an organization, because we're a professional medical organization, get calls all the time from medical students and residents who are actively seeking a place where they can practice, where they're not going to be pressured to perform abortion. So I actually think we're going to see a big influx of trainees into these states that have limited abortion, because those students who previously were self-selecting out of OBGYN because they didn't want to feel pressured to do abortions, now are going to feel free to go into our specialty and to come practice in a place where they can practice according to their conscience.
That's a fantastic point. I had not thought of that. There's one other issue that I want to address before we close up today. There are news reports that women are being denied medicine to treat conditions that have nothing to do with pregnancy, cancer, lupus, arthritis, antidepressants like lithium are being denied, supposedly antibiotics like Cipro, because each one of these medications has the potential to cause a miscarriage. What is your answer to those stories?
These stories are not based in fact. And if there are pharmacists that are denying those medications to patients, those pharmacists need to be better educated on what their state law actually does and does not prohibit. So every state law that I have seen that is currently on the books, if it prohibits a medication, it's prohibited for the express use of inducing an abortion. So the actual medication is not prohibited, but the function, if it's being used to induce an abortion, that might be prohibited by a state. However, physicians, pharmacists can still dispense medications that might have a side effect of potentially impacting a pregnancy, but it's being used for another treatment. This is how, again, this is how we practice medicine for the last 50 years, even under Roe. So you counsel your patients about the potential side effects, and then you use that medication for its indication. You know, the other thing is that in order for insurance to cover medications, you have to link it to a diagnosis code. And so in doing that, you're clarifying that that's not being used to induce an abortion. And so, you know, if these claims are true that pharmacists are denying dispensing medication, that's not the fault of the law. It's the fault of the pharmacist not understanding the law. And so there is a huge need for education within the healthcare community about what these laws do and do not mean. And I want to reassure women that their healthcare should not be impacted by these laws. If anything, it's going to improve their healthcare, but it does require healthcare professionals to do a little bit of educating of themselves now that the laws in their state are potentially changing.
Sure, absolutely. We are running out of time, and I don't want to close this because it's such a pleasure speaking with you and hearing your perspective on these things. But I do want to give you the chance to tell people how to reach you, how to find your organization, and any other closing comments you'd like to make.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot more that we could talk about, but we do have a lot of good information on our website, which is aaplog.org. And under our resources tab, we have a lot of really good documents, especially addressing some of this confusion that's going on right now. We also have a podcast that's up on there that people can listen to find out a lot of really good, helpful information. And you can follow us on social media as well. So I'd encourage people to check out our resources in that way. And then also to understand that as a professional medical organization, we are representing pro-life medical professionals. So I want people to understand, even though they're hearing a lot of voices maybe in the media from physicians who are saying that the overturning of Roe is a bad thing for women's healthcare, we represent thousands of medical professionals who have always practiced from a pro-life standpoint and know that our patients' healthcare, both our maternal patients and our fetal patients, is actually improved when elective abortion is not used.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Francis. Really appreciate you.